Welcome to the Complete Street Commission's April 9th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I would like to introduce Complete Street Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Sally Cole. Commissioners present include Athena Arakomos, Jackie Sebrian, and Brian Altman. Meredith Bergen-Bailey, Lisbeth King, and Matthew Raskoff are absent. City staff present include Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner, Cassandra Cortez, Associate Transportation Planner, and Christian Choi, Senior Transportation Planner. Cassandra, would you please provide instructions to the Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Cole and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the April 9th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, virtual attendees on Zoom may engage the raised hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Katrine, do you have any reports and announcements?
I do. The City Council had a priority setting workshop at the end of March. The top priorities for the fiscal year 2005-2006. The City Council decided to keep the 4 existing priorities of climate action, emergency and disaster preparedness, housing, and safe routes, and they added downtown vibrancy as a 5th priority. The next steps are to work on the budget. So the public budget workshop will be May 29th, and that will be followed by a City Council public hearing June 10th, and then the budget adoption will happen at the June 24th meeting. That concludes my reports and announcements.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject that is not listed on tonight's agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or your city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under this public comment section other than to provide general information. Cassandra, could you please call for general public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Cassandra. Moving on to regular business. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is E1. Accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for March 12th, 2025. Is there any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? Hearing none. Cassandra, can you please call for public comments on this item?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for the public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Cassandra. Before I ask for a motion, I just wanted to ask Katrine if it's possible, and the whole commission actually, to see if it's possible, to just add 2 words to the minutes. When we discussed, if everyone looks at page 2 of the minutes, Before, the paragraph before we made a motion, and thank you to Katrine for capturing all the elements of that motion. It was very long. Really appreciate your accuracy here. In the paragraph above where it expresses what we discussed, it seemed that based on public comment and based on the commissioner's comments during the meeting, there was just a lot of discussion about the crosswalk at Santa Monica, and the hope that staff, not in the context of this quick build pilot, but in the future would return to the topic of looking at an additional crosswalk on Santa Monica and for enhanced safety. So I wondered if it would be all right with everyone if we could add in that sentence, first sentence, the commission discussed outreach on overnight parking permits, direct coordination with property managers. I would say the feasibility and desirability of an additional crosswalk and raised crosswalks in Santa Monica. If people feel like that reflected our discussion at the meeting, I would propose to add it. If not, we will not. Any thoughts? Oh, you weren't there. Okay. So Jane, does that feel like it reflects the discussion? Yeah? Okay. So thank you. So I will then make the motion, since I'm the one proposing the change, that we approve the minutes from the March 12th meeting with those two words added to the paragraph. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Sebrian. So I think we have a motion and a second. Can we take a show of hands on the motion? Okay. Thank you very much again for your work on the minutes. All right, we're going to move on to regular business item E2, which is the primary subject of this meeting, to provide feedback on the Willow Road Bikeway and Pedestrian Improvements Project. Very excited to hear more about this. Staff Christian Choi, the city's senior transportation engineer, will present this item. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Cole, Complete Streets Commissioners. I'm Christiane Choi, with Senior Transportation Engineer with the city's Transportation Division. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting about our Willow Road Bikeway and Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. And the city is partnering with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority to deliver the project. And so tonight, Vamsi Tabjulu from the TA is here. He's the project manager for the TA. And then I'm also joined by Prasanna Muthareddy, who's with Kimley Horn and Associates. She's the project manager with her consultant team that's assisting on the project. So tonight's presentation, we're going to just go over the history of the project, the purpose and need, some of the community engagement that we've held, go into the proposed improvements, talk about some of the analysis we have done so far, then end with the cost estimate and next steps. So this map here shows the extent of the project. It starts over at O'Keefe on the west side of 101 and then extends all the way to Bayfront Expressway. And most of Willow Road is located in Caltrans right away, so a lot of coordination between Caltrans and our project team has been occurring throughout the project. So just class 4 bikeways have been identified in a number of plans, including the CCAG Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, which identified Willow Road as a countywide backbone bikeway network. And then our Transportation Master Plan also identified Willow Road as being a high-stress roadway for bicycles due to the high speeds and high volumes of traffic. And then the Caltrans District 4 Bike Plan also included class 4 bikeways on Willow Road and identified it as a top priority. So in 2023, Caltrans completed a project initiation document. That was kind of the first phase in starting the project. And then the city then started work on the project approval and environmental clearance phase. That's the phase we're currently in. And we hired Kimley Horn to help us with that work. So as part of that, this phase, we've identified the needs for the project and the purpose. And so, there's a number of collisions along Willow Road. And this image here is kind of from our Vision Zero action plan that shows, you can see the number of collisions that have occurred. And then there's, a lot of gaps between bicycle gaps and then also not as many pedestrian crossing along this corridor. And then towards the east, there's not a direct connection between Willow Road and the Bay Trail that's along Bayfront Expressway. Some other concerns are just the crosswalks crossing Willow Road are long. And there's a number of high conflict areas at the intersections, both for pedestrians and bicycles. So then this leads into the purpose of the project, where we want to improve the safety, comfort, and accessibility for bikes and pedestrians along Willow Road, and also enhance that connectivity to the Bay Trail, as well as the neighborhoods along Willow Road. And then there is bus service along Willow through Samtrans and also the city shuttle service, and then the Dumbarton Express, I believe is what it's called. And so we are coordinating with the transit agencies to improve their bus stops along Willow Road, and in coordination with the bike project. So those plans that I mentioned had a number of community engagement efforts, but those were for kind of a regional or citywide type of plan. And so we also did some targeted outreach focused on this project. And we had done a couple of pop-up events held in the Belhaven neighborhood, one at Celestica Market, and then also one at the Belhaven Elementary School. And then we did an online survey at that time. And so some of the feedback we heard was just generally support for improvements for biking and walking on Willow Road, and then just concerns as a pedestrian about crossing Willow Road, as well as the high vehicle speeds, and then poor pedestrian lighting. Then now I'm going to turn it over to Prasanna to talk about our proposed improvements.
Thank you, Christiane, and good evening, Chair and Commissioners. So the map here shows Willow Road, corridor on the north side of this, or the top of the blue line is where the Bayfront Expressway is, which is the 84 connection. And then on the far south is, it ends just before the 101 interchange. We'll go into the detail about what we're proposing as far as the improvements go at the interchange in a minute as we go through the slides. But this is the corridor, highlighted in blue, and there are some intersections highlighted that kind of show our proposed improvements, related to high visibility crossings and a new crossing at O'Brien, etc. So this is just a high-level map. We're going to go into the corridor and the proposed improvements. Will start from the Bayfront Expressway, that's at the north or east end of Willow Road, and then we'll work towards 101 and south of 101. So the main purpose, again, the main improvement that this project proposes is introducing a Class 4 bikeway. As some of you already know, Class 4 bikeway is a type of bicycle facility that separates the bicycle traffic from the vehicular traffic with some sort of a vertical separation. In some cases, it is a curb and landscape area. Sometimes it's just a vertical curb. Sometimes it's a vertical delineator or a channelizer, some sort of devices that separate bike facility from the traffic, or the cars or the vehicles. And so on the top that you, in this image here, you see the existing condition, which is the corridor currently has buffered class 2 facility throughout the corridor. And what we are proposing for majority of the portion of the corridor where there is no constraints, we are proposing to raise the bike facility to the same level as the sidewalk and differentiate with the type of treatment or the type of pavement that will be used between the sidewalk and the bicycle facility. And as far as the element, the vertical element that would be between the traffic and bicyclists would be a raised median or a raised, landscape area. And so there are also areas, again, this is a visual rendering of, of one location along Willow Road, where currently on the left you see the existing condition is a class 2 buffered bike lane, and in the proposed condition you see how it is a raised class 4 facility. And so there are locations along the corridor where there are constraints in terms of right-of-way, available right-of-way width, or there is a potential future project coming in terms of development where we do not want to propose these, improvements that will be ultimately, again, when that new project comes in, removed or reworked. And so at those locations where it is a constrained location or there is a future project in planning, we will be still continuing a class 4. So we are upgrading from a class 2 to a class 4. However, these will be low cost type of improvements related to vertical separators. And what kind of separators is not determined yet. Those will be determined as we move into the design phase. Currently, we are in the environmental phase. These are preliminary concept drawings, and there are several different types of vertical separators that Caltrans and different cities use, and will be coordinating on that as we move forward in the next phases of the project. So, as I mentioned, we'll start with the Bayfront Expressway intersection, and then we'll, now that we established what the improvements along the corridor are going to be, we'll kind of focus on the intersection improvements. This is at Bayfront Expressway. Currently, on the top left is the ladder crosswalks that you see. As part of this project, we are proposing to provide shared pedestrian and bicycle crossings that delineate bicyclists and pedestrians to cross and minimize conflict between bikes and peds. We're also proposing to, at the ramps, provide some landing areas or mixing areas between the bicyclists and pedestrians so that there is a smooth transition from from one side of the intersection to the other, as the bike facility transitions from a class 2 to a crosswalk to a class 4 in this location. So as we move further south, the next intersection here is the Hamilton Avenue intersection. Currently, as you can see, there is already a delineation between bicycles and pedestrians, at the crossings. However, what we are also doing is to provide an inline transit boarding island for buses, which currently is not available. There is a bus stop at the far end on Willow, and so that would be improved to the latest Samtrans standards to provide ease of access to transit facilities. And again, the raised class 4 bike way continues through this intersection as well. We're also providing vertical posts to separate class 4 bike lane on the right side of the intersection, and then transition to a class 4 on the left side of the intersection. So moving to a little further south, we have two intersections, O'Brien Drive and Ivy Drive. This is where there is uses on both sides of Willow Road and a lack of connectivity with not having a crosswalk at O'Brien Drive in the current conditions. And as far as the bike facilities goes, the buffered class 2 exists. And at Ivy Drive, we have skewed crosswalks. So as part of our project improvements, you can see that the skewed crosswalk at the Ivy Drive intersection is made perpendicular with refuge islands, as well as adding a new crosswalk at O'Brien Drive, providing that additional connectivity to those accessing both sides of Willow Road. In addition to, again, continuing the Class 4 facility throughout. So the next intersection is at Newbridge Street. A similar kind of improvements. At this intersection, we do have transit stops on either sides, which again, we are providing inline transit boarding islands for these buses, as well as if you see on the south side, or we'll just use that image there as the southwest corner. That's another pinch point where we are providing some vertical posts because of existing utilities and right-of-way issues, etc. And then transitions back to a class 4 on the other side of intersection as soon as we gain some more width. Okay, so moving on to the 101 interchange. This is recently reconstructed interchange. Currently, there is a class 2, buffered bike lane that continues from Willow Road and transitions to a class 4. There's an option to either continue on a class 2 or take a class 4 barrier separated bikeway at the on the structure itself, on the overcrossing itself. And then it transitions back to class 2 after the ramp intersections on the other side of the freeway.
Can I ask a quick question? Would you mind? Would you mind, with these pop-ups here, significant volume of southbound on-ramp, and then it says vehicles observed cutting across, could someone just show, maybe if you could go up to the, or on the slide or something, just, I'm not a little confused about what that's referring to or how that's flowing?
Yeah, I'll
you.
explain that. Yeah, I'll explain that in a minute here. So we can start with the rightmost, maybe, Christiane. This one here, the top right callout that you're seeing, significant volumes of southbound on-ramp traffic blocks access to the northbound on-ramp, meaning the right turn lane that you're seeing there that is going to the northbound on-ramp. During peak hours, our observation is the queues that go to the southbound on-ramp are so long, the volumes are so high, that they are starting to get into that right turn lane, basically, right? And which means the folks who are trying to get to the northbound on-ramp are now blocked with those folks who are not able to go straight to access the southbound on-ramp, right? Yeah, so that's the top right. And then so if we come to the middle top call out, what that says is vehicles observed cutting across buffer to bypass southbound on-ramp traffic, right? So I see some nods, meaning you probably experienced that. And on the bottom right call out, what we are calling out there is that the existing class 2, basically it's a safety concern because there's a lot of this cut through and aggressive driving, especially during the peak hours. So moving to the next slide, so what we try to do at the ramp interchange is a combination of improving the bicycle and pedestrian safety as well as doing some lane reconfiguration, as we may call it, to allow for better traffic lineup, or flow, basically, in terms of operations as well. That ultimately, again, translates to bicycle and pedestrian safety, right? So what is being done here is that, if you can see, we, on the north side of US 101, we have 2 lanes coming from Willow towards the interchange. And on south side of 101, then they merge to, it's only a single lane, right? But there is a opening in between Newbridge and um, the 101 interchange itself, wherein in the current conditions, it's 3 lanes, right? Now 3 lanes to 2 lanes to 1 lane. So what we are proposing as part of this project is make a dedicated right turn towards the northbound on-ramp, and then keep dedicated lanes, 2 lanes that will serve the southbound loop on-ramp, so that eliminates this blocking of the northbound on-ramp, and it eliminates cut-through traffic and everything. So people who are going to the southbound on-ramp can start lining up in their respective lanes prior to coming to that first ramp intersection, right? So that allows for a streamlined traffic flow and not late minute, cut through traffic elimination. And so the local traffic who are continuing on to the other side of the interchange can still be on the 2 lanes that are on the left side. Now, instead of going from 3 lanes to 2 lanes to 1 lane, they can still stay on the 2 lanes, continue on to the other side of the ramp intersections as 2 lanes, and then just drop from 2 lanes to 1 lane. So that short distance of merger, now instead of going from 3 to 1, it's 2 to 1. So that kind of also improves the overall merge weave and traffic issues in that location. So as far as the bicycle improvements that go, in the existing condition, as you remember and know, it's going from Class 2 to either a Class 2 or Class 4. Now we have a continuous Class 4 facility. Now you're going from a Class 4 to a Class 4. There is advanced detection, both in terms of video and the loop detection, etc. We can, add into the project plans or into the project that we're proposing, that will allow for a smoother, operations for bicycle and pedestrians through the interchange zone. And we're doing the same thing on the northbound Willow as well, where there is an existing Class 2 and a Class 4. We're eliminating the Class 2. It's going to be a continuous Class 4 facility, so the transitions work much more smoother. So south of US 101 interchange and the existing condition, as I pointed out in the previous slides, we're going from the 3 lanes to 2 lanes to a single lane south of Bay Avenue or Bay Road. Again, westbound Class 2 transitions to a Class 3 Sharrow in this location, and also there is an existing free right turning lane at Bay Road, which is also, again, a safety issue. Again, pedestrians are also crossing 2 legs here and a longer crosswalk, and there is no crossing Willow Road at Bay Road intersection. And in the eastbound, Class 2 becomes, that's fine. There you go. In the eastbound, Class 2 bike lane only starts after Bay Road. Before that, it is a Class 3 shared lanes. So how would it change with the project? So as I mentioned, let's first talk about the westbound, right? If you're following through, we continue those 2 lanes from the overcrossing. Removing that we opened the right turn lane. What we observed is the volume of traffic that's taking that right to Bay Road is also pretty high. And so we are allowing a pretty long right turn lane there. We're opening it up versus somebody from the ramp taking a free right turn into the next lane, right? So we're tightening that intersection and then opening a right turn lane after someone takes a right turn from the ramp, right? So that's one thing. And then for those coming from the other side of Willow, again, they're not just jumping across the intersection to the rightmost lane. They are first coming into their own lane and then making a right turn lane. Again, at Bay Road intersection as itself, where you saw these long crosswalks or an angled crosswalk, we're able to kind of tighten that turn and the curb ramp there, and now provide a more perpendicular crossing and a more visible crossing for bicyclists and pedestrians. And then south of Bay Road, it moves from a 2-lane to merges to a single lane, much smoother in terms of both operations, as well as will continue the raised Class 4 bike facility at this location. Again, this is another constrained location where we will not be able to provide a landscape buffer, but it will still be vertically separated with a curb. And then the eastbound direction, similar improvements. We provide eastbound Class 4 bike lane west of Bay Road, and then provide pedestrian and bicycle crosswalk across Willow Road. Continues on to a Class 4 north of Bay Road, and then continues on to the Class 4 that currently exists on the interchange. So as part of the PAED, on top of the design concepts, we also developed the traffic analyses. We analyzed the traffic operations for existing condition and the proposed condition, made sure things are not getting worse for traffic, queues and delays, etc. Travel times are expected to remain more or less the same with these additions of new crosswalks and changes in, timings and things like that. And we did get an approval from Caltrans in February of this year on the traffic operations analyses. Another parallel process to this is, because we are in the environmental approval phase, we are conducting environmental analyses as part of this. Several technical studies are being conducted. City of Menlo Park is the CEQA lead agency, and Caltrans is the NEPA lead agency. And, the project qualifies for a statutory exception for CEQA. And with that.
Thanks, Prasanna. So just to go into the cost estimates, so we're, as I had mentioned earlier, we're in that project approval environmental clearance phase. The next phase would then be the PS&E or design phase, and we are fully funded for that via the TA's Measure A highway grant. And then we have partial funding for the construction phase. So we still have a funding gap there. I think you might remember we came to the commission last fall to review the complete streets checklist. That was for a grant application. And unfortunately, we weren't successful with that grant application. So the city staff were continuing to look for other opportunities to fund the construction. So just the next steps, we're wrapping up this phase. We're hoping to get that done later this summer with approval from Caltrans. And then we would move into the design of the project later this year. And that's when the TA will take over, and they will take the lead in doing the design and construction phase, with the city staff being kind of support staff there. And then depending if we do get funding, we could start construction either late 2026 or early 2027. And so that concludes our presentation, and so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. It's really excellent. All right. Do we have any clarifying questions from the commission about the presentation before I take public comment? Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Seagreen. Do you want to go first? No, you can go.
Okay. The crossings where the Class 4, the new bike lanes cross over the off and on ramp. ramps. So like, what does that look like for, is there gonna be a signal there to, it'll be a signalized then? I mean, obviously, but.
The intersection itself is signalized, and then there is going to be the bike signal as well at the intersections.
Okay.
So that's where the, if there is a bicycle detected, whether we're still debating whether it is going to be a camera detection or a loop detection or both, because we've seen positives and negatives with, both. So depending upon that detection, that will be selected in the PACD phase. If there is a bicycle present, there's going to be a lead time for bicyclists to first cross before, the vehicular traffic, basically. So there's going to be a separate signal for bicycles and pedestrians, just like pedestrian push buttons.
Okay, thank you. That was really my biggest one, but, yeah. Thank you.
I guess I just have a quick follow-up question to that, because I wasn't familiar with that bicycle detection, system. So if you're standing there as a bicyclist and is it a light that goes your way? You get a light that says you
Yeah,
need them?
like how, where you have the pedestrian push buttons,
Yes.
sometimes bicyclists don't like to kind of get down and push the button. Sometimes it's too far,
Yes.
it's not convenient.
Yeah.
So that's where the bicycle detection comes in, when there is a video detection or a loop in the bicycle pavement itself. It's like pushing the
Sure.
button, basically. And
Sure.
so there is a bike symbol that shows saying you can kind of cross, just like you have a pedestrian symbol saying that you can cross.
And so what are the cars seeing? When it's time for the bike to cross, what are the cars seeing?
I'll have to kind of go back and look at what the traffic analysis does. There could, in situations, sometimes we do have no turn on red, right, when the bicycles are present.
Can we close that door? Would you mind? Sorry, can you close the door? Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if the traffic operations analysis, does not see any issues with the queues, what happens is sometimes we can put a no turn on red. I'll have to go back and remember if there is a no turn on red in the existing condition or not. But yeah, I don't have the answer right now, but I can follow up with you on what that condition for vehicular traffic would look like.
I guess I'm trying to track with that. I'm trying to understand from the cars, if we're sort of giving an all go for it signal to the bicyclists, like how are they protected from a car turning into that crosswalk?
So a car turning a right, let's say, right, if there is a pedestrian button or a
bike
pedestrian crossing that's coming up or a bicycle crossing that coming up, it's flashing, right?
Mhm.
Number one. And number two, in some cases, there is no turn when there is pedestrian bicycles.
Right.
Whether we are implementing on this or not is something that I need to
I
go
see.
back and
Yeah,
check.
I understand.
Yeah.
I guess I'll comment in the feedback section about that so we don't too much. Anyway, clarifying question. Did you have one, Commissioner Gomez?
I have a question about a couple of basically the interactions kind of at a couple of the intersections between people turning and the class 4 bike lanes. So for example, on O'Brien, I just wasn't sure, like I work on O'Brien and I turn onto Willow on my bike all the time. So this is an intersection I'm familiar with, but when you turn off of O'Brien and go left, or right, well, I guess right is pretty easy, but if you're going left, will there be a ramp onto the class 4 lane, or is it like a wide driveway, or like what is the, like, do you have to go into the crosswalk to get onto the class 4 bikeway? So what's the entrance look like at that point?
If we can go back. Get a visual, if I can understand. I want to make sure I understood your question, right? So you're saying you're coming from O'Brien and making a right to...
Making a left onto Willow. So, right, like as it stands now in the class 2, you just kind of turn into the lane as typical, but if, I guess, will there be like, I guess I'm asking about the entrance into the class 4 lane and also at the Bayfront
Mhm.
intersection as well, where there's only one crosswalk on one side of that intersection. So on both of those, like how, like,
Right.
so this is the O'Brien one. I guess I don't really see a dedicated driveway for like bicyclist? Do they have to go into the crosswalk to get onto the bike lane?
Currently, you're right. Currently, the way it is, they will have to kind of, cross only on one side because we don't have the crossings on both sides. If you're coming north on O'Brien and taking a left, that's your question, right? So yeah, the crossing will have to be on the left side. So there's a mix between pedestrians and bicyclist traffic. But if you, on another way, depending upon which way you're going, you can easily move into the eastbound, class 4, and then take a left at the Ivy Drive intersection, right? If you're going that way. But yeah, for the left, we can actually, that's a very good comment. We can look to see if there is bike boxes that we can provide in front of it to be able to make that left.
And also on the Bayfront one, is that similar that there's sort of one narrow entrance for bicyclists who are entering? I guess I know that you guys
This one here.
discussed the sort of
Yeah.
type space for that for bicycle and pedestrian sorting, but as you're going towards Facebook, for example, like if you're going eastbound, you do have to take this like kind of hook across and then cross in that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This is pretty much at the far end of our, project. I know there is another project on Bayfront itself. Maybe there might be because 84 is again and SR 114, right? Or 114 Willow Road. Both of them are Caltrans facility. On the adding another crosswalk would really change a lot in terms of traffic operations, and that's kind of out of the scope, of our project. So what we are doing as part of this is, with the current crossings, we are trying to see if we can minimize, those conflicts between bikes and peds, as well as, do what we can in order to kind of shorten those crosswalks and make them perpendicular and things like that, and adding more landing areas for mix between or better spacing between bicycles and pedestrians.
Anyone have any other clarifying questions on the commission?
Sorry, I have one more question. You mentioned, I don't know if this is not directly related to this project, but just kind of informational. You mentioned maybe development, not wanting to put in the sort of investment in like the landscaped barriers because there might be some developments that are upcoming which would need to remove them. Are those, are there existing plans for those as yet, or are they kind of, maybe there will be?
So, the main location is Willow Village, and so we've been coordinating with that development about, when they come in to build, that they would build a raised for class 4 as well to, to meet with our project.
Great, thank you.
Else? Oh, thank you, Commissioner Altman.
Hey, that's good. Great, thanks. Regarding the 22 collisions that happened along Willow, what are the top 1 or 2 causes? And what do you feel the impact of this new design will help with that? First question. Second question is, you said there was a gap in the funding, and that we were unsuccessful to get a grant. Just maybe comment on what the root cause of that was.
Generally, the collisions have to be do at intersections. That's our initial data. As far as the full collision analysis goes, we did do that as part of the project, but I don't have the data right now with me to share. I can follow up with that information on what that is, but it has to do a lot with the vehicular and the bicycle and pedestrian conflicts at the intersections along Willow Road.
And then could you repeat the question about the fund, or what were you asking about the funding?
Yeah, so there's a gap in the funding, correct?
Yes.
Just what kind of number is that? And then we were, the grant was not successful. Just like, I was kind of curious as to what the reason was.
Yeah, so
This is the MTC.
Yeah, so the grant was for the MTC Safe Routes to Bay Trail and Transit. And so we just missed the cutoff for that. I think they're funding maybe 7 projects and we were number 8. There is a possibility that if one of those projects were not to move forward, we could get funded, but we don't know that at this time. And then I think the gap is it like 8 million, something like 8 million.
Okay, so it's kind of a prioritization. 7 projects seem to be better, and then the gap
Right.
is 8 million.
All right, thank you. Well, with no further clarifying questions from the commission, Cassandra, can you please call for public comments on this item?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, press star 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Cassandra. All right, well, let's see if there's any further commission discussion. It was a long presentation, so there probably is. I just want to say off the bat that first of all, thank you for coming from the county. It's nice to see you, nice you're here. I served on the Vision Zero Task Force, and I really commend the staff for continuing to push ahead with this project because it's exactly the kind of high crash corridor that we really want to address in our city. And we know it's interesting that those collisions were in intersections because we know that intersections is really something that's very much needs to be addressed in the high crash corridors. And I appreciate that you walked us through all the intersections and all the improvements. And I could see that there was just a lot of thought put into it. So thank you. In terms of commission discussion, I had a couple of questions, but I'd be very happy if other commissioners made sure we had time for everyone. So does anyone have any further discussion or want to give any feedback about the proposal at all? Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Sebring.
First, I like totally agree with the traffic assessment and the ways that everybody's interacting around those intersections. I thought you definitely captured all the things I see. So I am delighted to see that we're putting in better bike lanes. I'm super excited to see the elevating the bike lanes to sort of visually include them with pedestrians. Like, I would love to see that model replicated in more places when we put bike lanes. I think separating bikes from the road is kind of a nice feel for it. I forgot one question. The in-lane transit boarding islands, like, what does that mean exactly? I feel like I've heard this before and I probably know it, but I just was having a hard time.
So traditionally, when we have bus pull-outs, right, buses come in, pull out, passengers get in, and then the buses have trouble kind of getting back into the lane, especially on high volume corridors where people are going fast and not giving the buses, that space to kind of get back into the lane, right? So when you have an in-lane bus stop, the buses stop in the lane, so they're not pulling out. So the vehicles behind them have to stop, and these are far side bus stops, right? Meaning vehicles can stop on the other side of the intersection, right? And now the passengers can get on quickly and get off quickly and the buses can continue on, basically. So those are the inline bus stops. And so as far as the islands those islands are the places where pedestrians or bicyclists are waiting instead of waiting in the sidewalk or in a bike lane. So you have like a separated space for those waiting for the transit to wait and not block the bicyclists or pedestrians.
That makes more sense to me. Thank you so much. But really, it was great presentation and, seems like this could definitely help. Also because, the queuing up, it's a particular, in my house, we talk about these things a lot. The queuing up on Bay Road where cars sort of eat into that bike lane space because they all want to turn right. And so, I think tightening up that little mergey mess would be lovely. So thank you.
Commissioner Comos?
So I guess, first of all, I'm very excited for Class 4 bike lanes on Willow. I think that that's really, gonna open up all that corridor to biking a lot as people feel safer and worry as much about conflict at those intersections. And also, bike detection on the overpass, because I tried it once and I waited there for like 3 minutes and I was like, because as cars are turning, unless a pedestrian has gone to push the button, then you're kind of cutting straight across that right turn lane and it's very hard to see. So I really appreciate that as well. My one kind of open-ended comment on this is, mentioned a lot about the intersections, but the intersections kind of session stopped at Bay Road, and there's a lot of conflict which comes between Bay and the VA, right? Where in that where it's all whatever sharrows basically, and I guess I think the plan is to continue the Class 4 bike lane there, but I didn't, yeah, the diagrams were not, and just thinking about how that interfaces with after the VA, which is as you continue, like towards downtown Menlo Park on that part, which is, I think, a Class 2 right now. It's a nice bike lane, but isn't protected, but just kind of thinking about that transition.
I had the same question on that.
So it did not show in the exhibit that we had in the presentation, but you are right. It does. The Class 4 facility goes as far as Durham intersection, which is the VA intersection that you mentioned. Yeah, and then after that, it is again. That's pretty much our limits of our projects. We do provide transition from a Class 3, which is on the other end, to this, Class 4. Can share, later, maybe. But yeah, we did think about that transition from the existing, and what the best way is in order to be able to do that, and yeah, that's included as part of the project.
That's very good to hear. When I was driving here tonight, eastbound on Willow, it seemed I was tracking between, after Middlefield toward the highway, I was seeing the Class 3, and all of a sudden everything sort of disappeared until you got up to the one thing going up the overpass. So I'm really happy to hear that's being filled in.
I don't know, maybe this kind of relates to the funding question that we had earlier. One more question is, if the funding gap is closed, not closed, or closed partially, are there prioritization aspects to this project? Like some can still be implemented with the funding that exists, or, do we have to wait for all of it to come?
Yeah, so I think we're trying to obtain the funding so we can build the whole project. I think depending on what happens in the next couple of years, we then might start to think about whether there's something we want to build first, as opposed to waiting till we have all the funding. So, but we're not at that stage yet.
Kind of to that question on my funding question, if from a Vision Zero, most accidents are intersections and speed, is there a way to decrease the initial cost or phase in if you were to focus just on the intersections themselves and focus on speed, right? Because those are that's 90% of all the Vision Zero things anyway, right? I'm just, something to get it done like faster or quicker, or get over a hurdle of funding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we could consider, but that you know, in terms of when we'd start the design, we're gonna be designing the entire project, and so, that would, I'm not sure if all the, like, the intersection stuff works depending on, you know, the type of design it is, and so that might be, you know, creating a new design, if we just focused on intersections only.
Yes,
Sorry.
please go ahead.
As things come to my mind. One thing I've noticed on Willow is particularly in the evening commute, prevalence of cars either continuing through an intersection as it's yellow because there's a lot of traffic and they don't want to wait at the other side, or turning left, particularly at Newbridge. They turn from like yes, I mean, towards the bay side direction of Willow, and they turn left onto Newbridge, and they will kind of block the bike lane for the westbound side of Willow. So I don't know if there's anything to be done about that. I'm just kind of curious about if you guys noticed that, or if there are kind of ways to fix it. Yeah, basically cars kind of in heavy traffic trying to block the intersection rather than wait at the other side of a light.
I don't know if we can design for a bad, driving, thing, right? So, however, as part of the project, in order to provide these safe buffer zones or, the class 4, we're also narrowing the lane width. Typically, lane widths narrowing have shown improvement in the speeds, and the aggressive driving and things like that, right? So, just by means of that, we're hoping there will be some amount of slowing down or calming of traffic effect that will happen through this corridor.
Anything else? No. Okay, I had just a few things. Oh, when you were talking about the in-lane bus stopping, I'm just curious if it weren't that way and the bus had to turn out, it sounds like there wouldn't be room to put the bike lane, right? That's how we're kind of working that out a bit. Okay.
There, we may be able to add the bike lane, but then there will not be that island
Right.
where people can wait without conflicting with
Okay.
bikes and pets to
Okay.
board the bus. Yeah.
Helpful, thank you. Also, when I was looking at your slide in the beginning of the presentation around goals, it said more pedestrian crossings, safer intersections. I think you guys really nailed that down. And then I think it also said lower speeds and lighting. So I think you just addressed lower speeds. I can see with the advent of these safer intersections, it sounds like that will be slowing things down. But I'm curious about the lighting because I've driven, I don't bike down Willow, but I've driven it at night, and it always does seem to be a bit dark. And with all these enhancements at the intersections, are there any lighting enhancements as well?
Yeah. Again, we are in a preliminary and engineering and environmental document phase, so the details haven't been flushed out in terms of the design or how often, what the exact lighting is currently, if it's meeting the standards and things like that will be done during the design phase. However, at this phase, we did identify that the intersection improvements itself, warrant new signal design and, new lighting at the intersections. So at a minimum, the intersections themselves will be, upgraded to the latest standards in terms of lighting and new signal equipment and, signal poles, etc.
Okay, I would definitely thank you for making that a priority, and I hope it continues to be a priority. I had a couple of questions, partly because this commission has looked at a lot of different corridors in Menlo Park, and sometimes we've seen maybe obstacles or public comment that opposes certain sorts of traffic calming and other things. And so it's useful to us and educational to us if we see some of that in the plan and see that you figured it out. So how did you figure it out? So for example, I think Athena mentioned that, we've gotten pushback on different corridors about putting like a physical raised barrier, protected bike lane. And sometimes people have said that that won't work for things like emergency vehicles needing to pull over or, access a home or an office or whatever. And I'm just curious if you have designed these raised protected barriers in a way where that's not an issue, or is it more that because the Willow's not residential, there's less objection to not having a place for vehicles to pull over into the bike lane, of course, but pull over, sort of making that not possible?
So again, I cannot speak for those corridors,
Sure.
what the constraints are. Typically, what I've observed is, when you have a lot of driveways and,
Okay.
to provide that vertical separation would be hard. But then, that's where these raised class 4 come in, because those necessarily do not have a conflict with the driveway. They can
Okay.
still be pulled into the, in and out with the driveways, right? There's no physical obstruction coming in.
Right.
So that may be one of the cases. In our case, where we did provide those vertical separators, we didn't have as many driveways. So that kind of worked out, with the design. And we utilized Caltrans's latest design information bulletins that kind of, promote complete streets and, promote lane width reductions in order to be able to provide these, safer and, low stress bicycle, facilities to be able to kind of, use the available width to provide these bicycle facilities. As you can see, even within this corridor, there are areas where things are constrained, right? That where we don't have that landscape buffer, but it still has some sort of a vertical, separation basically. So it just had to kind of mold and fit and change the design as as the car at different places of the corridor. And
Mhm. I appreciate that. When I first looked, sorry, I'm talking a little closely to the microphone. When I first looked at the plan, I was just so happy to see this. You took the opportunity to create a separated or protected bike buffer, because it's something that I think a lot of people want to see more of on Menlo Park. And I think with the Willow being, a very high traffic corridor, with high speeds and intersected with a highway, it really makes a ton of sense. The other more minor question I had for you is green paint, because I know that some folks have been pro and con for green paint. I know in driving, I think green paint is really essential to call out a bike lane. It seems standard at this point, and it's a really important visual cue. So I guess no question there, except to say that I really hope we can maintain the green paint that we see in all the renderings, because I do think it's important. And I'd like to see more of that in Menlo Park. Okay, so because the staff report, we saw, we had a staff report on this back in October. We had one again. One of the things it really emphasized was Bellhaven, particularly the different schools, including Bellhaven Elementary, that have kids crossing Willow. So for me, I think the emphasis around the intersections and making sure the intersections are really safe is just so important. So if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is maybe just, and I don't think it'll take very long, but if you can just quickly show your diagram for each intersection, starting with Bay and going down. There were two that I had questions on, but maybe if we just quickly show it, we'll just check in with the 4 commissioners here and just say, any questions about this intersection, or, anything you want to raise before we move on. I'm just cognizant of the fact that I think this commission's done a really good job over the years focusing on making kids a lot safer on their bikes. As I was driving down Terminal, I saw a lot of kids on their bikes. So I'd just like to spend a little bit of an extra effort there to make sure it's as safe as we think it is. So yes, so if we can just show the diagram, I guess we'll start with Bay. The only question I had about that one, sorry.
Is it Bay or Bayview?
I'm
Front, sorry.
sorry,
Yeah,
you're correct.
Bayfront, which is the 84
Yes,
we're talking. Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I know Athena had some comments on this one. Did anyone else have anything here, or are we good with this one? Oh, separated by vertical posts. Okay, yeah. Good. Okay, Hamilton. So Hamilton, so Hamilton, there's signalized lighting. right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. In transit plan.
Quick question on the eastbound direction here. It says both buffered with raised delineators and class 4 bike lane.
Yeah, it is, when there is a vertical post, it's still a vertical separation,
Okay.
so it still qualifies
Okay,
for
okay.
a class 4.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
One thing, because I know the street less well than you do, if you could point out where an intersection is not signalized, like if there's not an actual red light stop. This one is one.
Mhm.
I think we can move on to the next one. I think the next was Ivy and O'Brien. They're all lights.
They're
but
all signalized.
O'Brien is a light? Good, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, okay, I feel better, thank you. So this was one where there was a refuge island. That was Ivy that I had written down. And I was curious why you put it in this intersection and what is the, like why this one and not others?
Yeah.
You know, that was, I wanted to know.
So there is an existing median there that allowed for that, refuge island, and we also have it at O'Brien as well. There is a refuge island. There are a few locations. So if you see on the left crossing of Ivy, because there are two left turn lanes, right? That middle island is shared with those two left turn lanes. There is hardly any space for us to provide any refuge island for that particular crossing at Ivy. But for the right side crossing, because we had that median, we
Yeah.
took advantage of that to provide. So it's really, fit, fitting to the existing constraints and providing
Good.
the best that we could. Yeah.
So is there one planned for Newbridge?
And I just wanted to add that this is Mid-Peninsula High School here. That's
That's what
like
she
the
was saying,
circle.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's really good, right? So I'm just curious about Newbridge because our, we talk about kids crossing to get to school. Obviously, we've got the high school, but kids crossing to get to Bellhaven Elementary, for example, are they crossing at Newbridge primarily? Or,
There's schools there.
right,
So if you're going.
okay.
I think, I'm not saying it
Okay.
doesn't happen, but I don't see
Crossing
crossing
Newbridge.
to Bellhaven.
And Ivy,
Ivy's a much nicer.
right, straight to, yes. Okay, good. Okay, and then Ivy has the
Again,
refuge
like, I'm
island.
not sure.
No, but I'm happy to hear that the island's in the right place.
And I think there are some students crossing here at Newbridge, but they might be going to MA high school instead. So there is some
Okay.
some at Newbridge, and then also maybe to access the transit stops.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments on, well, I see a lot of kids biking to, I think, what are the two schools that are on Willow close to Pullman?
Oh, and
Yeah,
the
there-
Silicon
and there's-
Valley International?
Yeah, the Silicon Valley
And
International.
I
and
think
then
it's
there's
KIP. Or
Kip,
KIP
that Kip Valiant. So I see a lot of kids that I think are going there, biking on the wrong side of the road. So they'll be biking on the sidewalk so that's just a comment. I don't know where they're coming from, but I presume that they cross here. Point.
Right.
And the other comment I had, oh yeah, there's that little shopping center here, that has the laundromat, the ice cream shop,
Yes.
and that street that's right next to it. Is there a plan to traffic there differently? I don't know. If
The
it's-
street that goes like,
Yeah, the little
Yeah,
one-way
you're talking
street.
about the front, that kind of frontage road.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not with this project.
Okay.
so.
okay, so this is Newbridge, and the only thing I had about Newbridge, oh yeah, so I think Newbridge was actually one of the intersections where there was, I think you called it like a pinch point. So there were vertical posts instead of a protected bike lane. So why here? Because this isn't near Willow Village, right?
Correct. This is not because there is a future project coming in. This is because it's right away constrained, and the moment we, provide a standard, width and everything, then it would mean the right away acquisition would come in, and that would kind of really push the project in terms of schedule and costs and everything else.
Okay.
And so it's a constrained location.
Is it constrained on the location? So when we talk about vertical posts, this is a much busier, speedier road, but near where I live, the vertical posts are often mowed down by cars. So I guess I would just ask us to take a look at ones that could really stand the test of time and protect the bikers there. That'd be great. Do you have anything?
One more
Yeah,
comment.
please.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
This bike lane width, does that include what might be considered like a gutter region where it's like that concrete sloped, like sort of sloped down region as opposed to kind of pavement? Because I think as it exists now at this intersection, the actual like pavement, like the bike lane from curb to line is whatever, a decent size, but the region that's pavement are like
Is
a little bit-
smaller,
is
yeah.
pretty narrow. And there's a grate right at the intersection, which, makes it hard to stop your bike right there. So, I guess that would be a design phase question, but
Yeah.
about the gutter, but
Luckily, I do have my designer here. At the same time, I don't know if we designed it to that level of detail. We'll have to kind of maybe go back and check, Connor.
okay, even on the eastbound side, which would be with the sort of vertical posts. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So one thing I'll do note about the speeds here is, as you can see, the lane width is also 10.5 feet for all those lanes. So hopefully that will allow for some of that traffic calming and, feeling of safety, and low stress for bicyclists. Even though it's that vertical post and not that raised type of facility, we're hoping the narrow lanes would help, slow down the vehicles enough.
Yes. Please go ahead. Mhm.
What are the current lane widths on Willow?
It varies 11 to 12 feet, but
Okay.
for most part, it's 12 feet.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Don't you love the specific questions from the people on this commission who ride on this road? It's so cool. Thank you guys for being so great with your questions. Lowering speed, I'm continuing to think about it a little bit because very often when we look at projects where speed is a concern, we hear that, we're going to add more speed feedback signs or we're going to do this or that, to make sure the speed is lowered. But it sounds like either that's not in the scope or there's enough. It's already been done on Willow, and this is really about more the intersections and the bike lanes. What do you think about that, Christian? Are you feeling comfortable with all the speed reducing measures? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that Caltrans has come out with a lot of new guidance, for context sensitive, bikeways that allows us to go down to this 10.5 foot lanes. They didn't allow that before, and that's more recent development, and I think that's a huge improvement for.
Oh,
for
fantastic. Well, that's good to hear. We didn't know that. All right. The last intersection I wanted to look at, because it's sort of terrifying to me, is the one where on the west side of 101, when you go right off of the ramp and a lot of people were kind of sliding right. So rather than ask a bunch of questions, do you feel great about this one? Because I've seen such bad behavior at this intersection, and I just want to make sure I appreciate there's a dedicated right turn lane, but I just want to make sure that the people, the bikes and the peds who are on that north side are going to feel safe in the connection they're making and on that crosswalk there with the median refuge. That one, I've always felt that there's a lot of bad behavior. In addition, I just wanted to ask,
So I was just going to show this.
Please.
I think the existing conditions, right, is the rights kind of encroach on this bike lane. And
Yeah.
so That wouldn't happen in the class 4 because now the bikes are
Over
on
there.
this, you
Yeah.
know, sidewalk. So there's not going to be that same interaction between the right
Yeah,
turns and
okay.
the bike.
Thank you.
This would be a great.
I mean, people are terrible there.
But it is dramatically
Cars.
better.
Given the volume of right turns here, might it be good, sorry, just seconding what you said, to have a sort of bike sensor feedback to turn on something like a
Yeah, I like that.
bike is, there's a bike crossing, because, yeah, as you're going straight across, and there will
Yeah.
be people who are not slowing down.
There's a really great sign that I see every morning when I drive to my workout. It's on Charleston. If you're going from Alma, Ward 101 on Charleston, and you're going to make a right on Middlefield, there's this just awesome sign that basically says, like, you know, you cannot turn right here if bicycles are present or something. But it's a lit sign. It's not. I do appreciate that because I just feel that I've never seen, it's one of those intersections in Menlo Park, and actually I used to live here in business school, where it's just been so long, just terrible. One of those places where I think we have to be a little bit like, don't do what you've been doing. That's my observation as a resident. Okay, okay.
They should
Well,
really take a moment to
yeah.
stop at that light and appreciate.
That would be great. That would be great. If you feel like, I'd love Athena's idea about an extra sign there, but just, I think we're telegraphing that we feel strongly that that should be as safe as possible. Okay, that's all that I had in terms of feedback. I guess I just want to really encourage staff to stay on this one. I know it's hard to get funding. We really support you in making this corridor. It's just going to transform it, you know, and appreciate the county too, you know, for working with us in partnership because it connects a lot of people, and Willow's only going to become busier, you know, and only going to become a little crazier. And so the thought of putting this into place now when we can, really, really critical. And I'm really very pleased with the proposal. Of course you can.
I think a lot about Willow.
Mhm.
The overpass, if we, so some behavior that I see on the overpass quite a lot, which, as someone who bikes over Willow overpass every day is quite dangerous in its existing form, but would be less dangerous with the class 4 bike lane, is the prevalence of people being in the straight moving lanes and cutting across all of the traffic to turn onto the southbound ramp, and then nobody lets them into the southbound lane, so they sit in the bike lane and wait. Anyway, that's, that conflict with the bikes will be removed as the bike lane moves to the protected area, but there will still be that kind of, there could still be that kind of like traffic behavior where cars are trying to cut across into that right turn lane. Yeah, and you know, maybe having 2 lanes there would help, but yeah, have you guys thought about that behavior at all, or because that I think is quite dangerous for people in cars also.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're trying to correct with having 2 lanes going on to the on-ramp. So I think part of the reason they do that is also because the on-ramp is wide enough to get 2 cars on there, you know, kind of side by side. And once we have the 2 lanes turning right there, it would be difficult to someone be a third car to do that. So there'd be a directed, you know, traffic flow there.
Okay. Well, if we've given all the feedback we have, then I guess that's done, we're not making a motion? I can't see on here, it doesn't look like we are. This is just informational. Okay. Well, thank you again. If you hear of any, if the county hears of any grant programs. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Great. Great. Thank you. And thank you for your work. Thank you. All right, then we will move on to informational items. Under informational items, the city staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. So let's start with, are there any updates on major project status? Katrine, do you have an update?
I do not have an update. That's
Okay.
good.
So no need to call for public comment. Let's move on to tentative Complete Streets Commission agenda. Thanks, Christian. Katrine, do you have the tentative Complete Streets Commission agenda? Updates on that?
I'm not even sure. I think the biggest change that happened on it was this item that we discussed tonight, Willow, was removed because we talked about it. I don't think I added anything new.
Thank you. Oh, so I guess we could call for public comment on this list of items that we expect to address as a commission. Cassandra, will you call for public comment, please?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide a public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Cassandra. Do we have any committee or subcommittee reports? No? All right. I want to thank the commissioners for coming tonight and establishing a quorum so we could have this meeting. And with that, I will adjourn at 7:55 p.m. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.